All right, here we go. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining today. We're here for the SKALE Mainnet launch series. I've got a great set of panelists here. We're going to talk deep about where we are as an industry with cryptocurrency and decentralized web and DeFi, et cetera. And then we're going to talk about where we're going. And we're going to talk about what the next year has in store. So we have a very exciting conversation and some of, I think, the most brilliant minds in the space who are spending a lot of time now and for a long period of time researching and learning and being involved actively in the cryptocurrency and decentralized computing space. So, so panelists, could you please introduce yourselves and to the audience? Jupiter, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me in this great event. And also congratulations to SKALE's Mainnet launch. And I'm Jupiter Zheng. I'm working in Hashkey Capital via investment firm based in Hong Kong. And we focus on blockchain and also crypto infrastructure investment. My role in Hashkey Capital is responsible for the investment research. So I'm leading the building up the whole research framework for the blockchain and also crypto industries. So definitely very happy to join this event to talk about the whole industry's trend, also the new event in this in recent days. I'd like to share more about how we think about the blockchain, also the cryptos. Thanks.
Thank you. So Mervyn, would you like to go next? We'll just go counterclockwise here.
Yeah, sure. Hey, Jack, thanks for having me. I've been really looking forward towards this SKALE Mainnet launch. And I think, like you mentioned, industry trends, right? So we actually started in 2017 as an investment firm called MW Partners. So looking at the industry trend from 2017, it's a lot of the focus was around infrastructure. So we invested heavily into a lot of the blockchain infrastructure, and we realized ourselves that we needed to start out a staking service provider because a lot of the issues that the whole industry was facing was around scalability. That's why we believed a lot in the idea of application-specific blockchains, and we invested so much into staking infrastructure for the Cosmos ecosystem. And that's how we slowly progressed towards also putting up more resources into SKALE, because we believe SKALE is sort of like a Cosmos for Ethereum, right? If you look at it, it's about building application-specific blockchains for Ethereum. And as the industry trend moves, we realize that a lot of the focus right now is around the product market fit. And right now, we see a lot of the product market fit in the DeFi space. So we are also launching our own yield aggregation service called unagi.com, where the focus is really specifically around DeFi yields and staking yields. So that's the progression of what we've been doing over the past 3 years. And yeah, I think it's been a really interesting ride.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, Tony.
Hi, Jack. Hi, everyone. This is Tony from Ngc Ventures. I'm one of the founding partners there. So it's been 3 years down the road. So Ngc it's a global firm. We have team in Shanghai, Singapore, and San Francisco. We have 3 funds managed so far. And yes, started from focusing on infrastructure investment, right? And publications, layer 2 solutions, and progressing into applications, including, as we all know, DeFi, CeFi, gaming, all kinds of stuff. I think as time progressing, we are, personally, I'm interested to see more adoption in the industry. I mean, it's been 3 years, right? I mean, it's been the right timing to go into that. My background used to be a banker, so specifically, I'll be interested to see application in the banking finance space and having a layer 2 solution, right? Having a faster, better, cheaper solution on Ethereum. I think it's an interesting angle to look at this. So look forward how Scale can help us all in that space.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you. So as I said, we have three, I think, very, very fine-tuned perspectives of where the industry is now and where the industry is going. And so I'm excited to get into conversation. So just so everyone knows, the SKALE Network, the phase 2 launch, which is the formal launch where validator nodes are running, stake is happening in the network, dApps will be able to start using SKALE chains very soon thereafter, is targeted for September 1st. We're very excited about the launch, and part of the reason why, as Mervyn alluded to, is all dApps that run on Ethereum can have app-specific or dApp-specific blockchains. So in a network of 1,000 nodes, there could be 8,000 independent SKALE chains running that all borrow and share security in a pooled manner with each other. And the good news about this is we don't get a user experience crunch. We can have sub-second block times, thousands of transactions per second, and have full interoperability within the Ethereum ecosystem. So that's just one example. And in addition, I don't want to forget gas fees. I think we're all aware of gas fees right now. The way that the SKALE chains are paid for is in a software as a service manner. So developers rent or buy a SKALE chain for a period of time. And they subsidize the cost. And then users, while they're in the chain, while transactions are happening there, you're not paying 10 cents or $1 or $10 for a transaction. So these things, as they all come together, that's just for the SKALE network. There's also so many other things happening across the Web3 landscape from an infrastructure perspective. And a lot of us, so both Tony and Mervyn, I think we've known each other since early 2018. And Jupiter, I've known you and some of your colleagues for a very long time as well. We've all been working in many, many areas across the globe on fixing the infrastructure issues. And my feeling is we're really, really close as an industry and with blockchain and crypto to getting to this point where we won't just see advancements at the infrastructure level, but those values will start extending themselves over to DeFi, to gaming, to B2B disruptors, to other categories of disruption for Web3. So I think we're already seeing a tremendous product market fit in DeFi, even though we'll talk a little bit about where maybe some growth has to happen. We've seen a little traction in gaming. I think there's a lot more to come, but I'd love to ask all of you for your quick take on where you think we are and what's in store for the next 6 months to 12 months in blockchain. So please, whoever wants to go first, go for it. Jupiter, go for it. I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Jack. I think in the past 2 to 3 years, I think the whole industry is focused on building a more a stable infrastructure in last past 2 to 3 years. But recently, we see that more and more real applications are built out based on current infrastructure like Ethereum, EOS, other public blockchains. But people still working on that, how to improve the features, how to improve the performance of the public blockchains. But in other ways, we see that the demand from the real users, they are increasingly exponentially. I see the DApp trend in 2018. We see the DeFi trend in these 2 years. I think people are not just satisfied with the current just trading the cryptocurrency. They want the real use by the Web3 node or the decentralized internet maybe in the future. So what I think that the demand is there, but the infrastructure still need to prove to match that demand. So what I think the people like SKALE that build up the real very easy use infrastructure for how this DApp can be embedded on the current Ethereum or other public blockchains. We know that the current Ethereum is still in the quick update to its phase 2, right? It's 2.0 phase. But I think the layer 2 is also a very useful, also practical ways to scale out the current infrastructure to improve the performance. So we see that a lot of layer 2 solutions still be very hot in the market. I think definitely SKALE provide a very easy use infrastructure for the DApp user, DApp developers to build up their whole ecosystem based on the current ecosystem. It's a practical solution for that. So maybe I think in the future, in the 6 or 12 months, more and more DApp and or more DeFi may grow up based on the current situation. I see that Ethereum 2.0 still is phase 0, phase 1, phase 2 as a long-term journey, but we can't wait that. We still see a lot of demand in the market. So we need practical solutions like SKALE to support that. So that is what I see, is seeing that the layer 2 is a must in the current industry. Also, we are quite happy to see the whole industry, the whole community is focused on it. Also, we're talking about, we see that the DeFi trend recently. We see the DeFi need more stable infrastructures. We see a lot of gas fees occurred in the current Ethereum network. We need a lot of things, a practical problem to be solved. So we're quite happy to see that the SKALE can provide such a, the whole integrated, can tap any aspect for the DeFi current situations. So that's what I think about how that trend the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. By the way, I want to make one quick comment. One of the most frequently asked questions I get is, what is SKALE's fit after ETH2 launches? And I just want everyone to know, I think SKALE will be needed even more and scaling for Ethereum once we get to ETH2. So the base issue, the root bottleneck will be less, but we're still only going to be about 100 transactions per second with a shared infrastructure. And there's still tremendous reasons for app-specific blockchains where, and imagine if we use our, like everyone, your email today, if your email costs way more money to use and is slower because Zoom meeting was getting too much traffic, right? And so, and also I think ETH2 is going to bring the daily average users to, instead of 10 or 20 or 50,000 to 10 or 20 or 50 million, which again, we're going to have even a greater issue and we're going to need greater scaling as the industry grows. So we're excited. We've been designing for the ETH2 launch, and I just wanted to answer that because people ask me that all the time. And I know you three know, but I wanted to make sure people here know. So, okay, well, thank you, Jupiter. That's a very, very, very great answer. So Tony, would love to hear your thoughts on kind of the macro right now, where we are, what are we going to see in the next few months?
Sure. I think Jupiter and Mervyn, they all shared the great points. I will not just to repeat on that. I think it's very clear that compared to 3 years ago, everyone is trying to be layer 1 and trying to be the dominant chain. I think that's not the case now. Everyone is trying to find a stacked solution, or where Ethereum is definitely the king, right? I mean, everyone else is either trying to work cross-chain or trying to adapt to Ethereum, or have some interoperability among each other. I think that is getting very clear now, and in the next 6 months is getting clearer. So every project is trying to find its own value proposition in the ecosystem. Something like DeFi, right? So you have a stack, you have different Lego you can plug into each other and help each other, and together you become a stronger ecosystem. Which is because if you look at the banking system 100 years ago, when you talk about bank, you're talking about credit union, right? It's a very simple bank. You deposit and you loan. But nowadays, when you talk about a bank, Goldman Sachs, it's a giant, it's a monster. It's including everything. They have a different business units. You have investment banking, you have merchant banking, commercial banking, you have all this sort of stuff, trade finance. And it's very similar on Ethereum now, right? If you're doing a smaller payment, you're buying a Coke, you're buying a coffee, you don't really go to Ethereum to do this, right? It's something like you don't really do a small transaction and going to Goldman Sachs. You go to your small local bank to do this, right? A financer do this. Same here. I would imagine there's a lot of different scenarios to be developed on Ethereum in the next 12 months. And we don't think it doesn't make sense, right? You should go to a little small community bank for your local needs. And in that case, you will need a sort of sidechain or sort of layer two solutions, so you don't waste the resources, right, on the main chain. I think that is going to be the case, and it's solving a lot of DeFi problem we are having now, like gas fee, and it also allows new applications to be able to run on the ecosystem instead of being washed out by the bigger players. And in Ethereum, I think that's, I mean, I'm just saying that we will see a lot of smaller ecosystem developed on the layer one solutions, just like many different back functions have been developed in Goldman Sachs, right? It's going to be working that way. Yeah.
I have to say, I definitely agree. I think we have the world in Web 2 does not work in a one size fits all manner, or in, prior centralized finance and, central fi, we could call it, instead of DeFi. So we will see specific use cases. And even today on Ethereum, we're finding that, if you're paying $10 in DeFi or $100 for a trade, like, it's not worth it unless you have something considerable that you're trying to move on the other side, right? So these things are already starting to come together. That's, I think, a very good, astute point. So hey, I heard some really, really insightful comments there and thoughts about where we're going. And I want to dial in a little bit more on DeFi because we all know there's actually something real happening here. But at the same time, for DeFi, I think to get to the next level, we've got to start getting more and more use cases that aren't entirely internal about crypto on crypto. However, the crypto on crypto element of DeFi is really unbelievable and impressive to see. But I'd love to hear all of your thoughts on just DeFi in general and where the growth is, because I think there's even more monumental growth when we get into other areas where loans and decentralized finance can be utilized. So please go around, and I'd love to hear all your thoughts on a little more on DeFi specifically.
Okay, I think I'll be the first. Yeah, I think the DeFi is in the early days. I think DeFi still try to copy its business model from the traditional finance. But recently we see some new trends here. In the past, people are get used to see DeFi can get the people on the internet to get their financing through decentralized applications. They're borrowing money, borrowing coins, other kind of stuff. But recently, people see that the new kind of business model has been risen. And in the past, we have decentralized exchanges featuring the order books, but recently we see more and more projects are focusing on the automatic market makers kind of type. I think this is more fitable for the DeFi solution, because in the traditional finance or in the centralized finance, I think the centralized exchanges are providing quite excellent framework for the users to get traded crypto or trade other kind of assets or synthetic assets through the centralized order book mechanism. But in the DeFi, we see different patterns here. That a lot of DeFi projects are been issuing the and issuing other kind of mechanism, but these tokens need to be some liquidity to support. We see that Uniswap may provide quite a good places for that kind of smart insurance or smart listing or quick issuing for the communities and for the users in the DeFi place to get that liquidity. That's the thing that centralized finance cannot do. And also the centralized exchanges and a lot of very compliant KYC, the AML process, but DeFi gives a very different user experience for that. So I think these two features may add up together to bring that DeFi going to a major, maybe in a new stages. We see in the last past years, people are devoting to the decentralized exchanges, but the total volume still quite low compared to the total volume traded on the centralized exchanges. But recently we see the whole trend, the whole, the top driven by the DeFi trend has driven that the volume in the decentralized exchanges to a quite high level. And I think maybe people will realize like Uniswap and other kind of AMM may provide a different solution, may provide different user experience for the users. So people in the crypto will get used to that. So the people may have a habit that we can trading some mainstream cryptos in the centralized finance, but also I have alternative to trade some new innovative tokens in the decentralized exchanges. It makes people have that kind of thought in mind, and maybe this is why now people are more and more focused on the decentralized, also the AMM's trend. Because it's really provided different ways to get your tokens or get other kind of asset to be into a real liquid pool, so people can be traded very freely. So this is how I see the DeFi's in the past, and also in the future. I think more and more new business model may grow up based on the current infrastructure. Because DeFi have to find its way to differentiate from its traditional centralized finance. Because as I think Tony has mentioned that the people are quite get used to the traditional Goldman Sachs, traditional commercial banks kind of services. The services quite satisfy our daily life. For in the future, when people are entering into a new era of Web 3.0 era, people get traded some information or asset or virtual asset on the internet. They may need a new kind of marketplace or new kind of new service for facilitate them to doing that. So I think DeFi is still in the early stages, and the new business model will be dig out gradually in the future. So in the same time, we need a very stable infrastructures. We need this infrastructure can provide any. Also can absorb the attraction, the interest from the current developer communities. That's the thing that the DeFi will be going. So yeah, that's my thought. Thank you.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, so I echo a lot of the thoughts, and I think back to your question about how is this like relevant to the more mainstream audience. So if you really just look at the higher level overview of DeFi and why it's found such a product market fit, I think if you look at all the like interest rate yields across like the Fed is probably giving you less than 1%, and everywhere else globally you're even seeing negative interest rates. So having interest rates of 5 to 15%, obviously there are risks involved, right? But having that kind of interest rates, excluding the incentive tokens that some of these projects are able to give, I think that's where you find the real product market fit to eventually like give a higher yield compared to traditional legacy finance. And I think the main reason why this is sustainable outside of all these incentives is the idea that money, which is programmable, which is the whole idea of how Ethereum was built upon, right? Where your money can now concurrently be sitting in a lending pool, sitting in an AMM, and earning fees from multiple sources concurrently at the same time. This kind of stuff couldn't exist and never will be able to exist in traditional legacy finance. But how is this relevant to more like non-crypto audiences? I think this will still need time to improve the user experiences. And a lot of that is around the developer experience, right? Like for us, we're also experimenting around building like smart contract wallets to pay for gas fees so that you can abstract that gas user experience for the end user. But doing that on L1 right now, I don't think it's sustainable, even if you try to do batching solutions and stuff like that. So I think having a solution like SKALE, where you're able to have gasless transactions and then also pay monthly upfront, like subscription-based models similar to how AWS is like, I think that's a very compelling solution to really solve all these issues that you're seeing in the DeFi space and try to bring this more mass market. So I think while you see a lot of the opportunities there, I think it's still really very early stages right now. There's a lot of like my other panelists have mentioned, like a lot of the issues that need to be solved on the infrastructure level in order to bring this mainstream, to really bring the value proposition of DeFi to like mainstream users. Because if you look at small numbers, like small capital base for the retail user, if you include gas fees of $5 to $10 per transaction, you're not going to be earning that much yield on a very small amount. So I think gas fees is a real problem that needs to be solved eventually. But like Jupiter said, I also see a lot of innovation around the AMM space. And I think how this is actually very beneficial is that there's going to be a lot of access outside of crypto through synthetics. But a lot of the synthetic assets that you see, you won't be able to find liquidity. So the idea of synthetic assets is that they're longer tail assets that are really exotics. In the finance space, they call them exotics, right? So if these exotic products are going to find I think the main problem that they're going to find is that they don't have liquidity for them. So in order to find liquidity for them, you need to invent new sort of market products like AMMs. So AMMs in general help find liquidity through the users. The users who issue these synthetics are able to earn additional yield on top of the assets that they issue, and at the same time solve the liquidity issue, solve the slippage issues to bring this more mainstream. So how is this relevant for the non-crypto audience? Imagine now you can use your BTC, your Ether, or any of these staked assets to issue Tesla shares, maybe Apple shares, and now you can actually build a whole financial economy on top of the digital crypto economy. So like I mentioned, I think a lot of these issues are still needing to be solved. We're really still in the nascent stage of DeFi's boom. And I'm very excited for solutions like SKALE that are coming on board to help solve all these problems. And if you've seen stuff like Reddit, right? Even Reddit themselves are evaluating scaling solutions. I think you've been involved with the Reddit scaling bake-off, where you see a lot of competition around Ethereum-based solutions because people realize that it has to be Ethereum-focused. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, you brought up one point earlier, and one something interesting that I think may happen too. So if you look at a network like SKALE, where you have you can stake for 3 or 6 or 12 months and get varied return based off your commitment to the network. And what we have is just like right there, a very direct, in a way, financial product where instead of collateralizing a loan, you collateralize the security of a chain, and essentially the security for the usage of a DApp or a DeFi application or a game. And I actually think we're going to get to a point someday where things like ETH2 and SKALE and other elements where there are direct contributors staking, that we're going to actually have synthetic assets and pooled financial vehicles or instruments that not only take DeFi packages, but take collateralization in networks as proof of stake networks. So I think we're going to see some interesting stuff happen, and you may even see more institutional involvement at the protocol level and more retail involvement further back, where they need to take less aggressive positions or even smaller positions or fractional positions, like what we're seeing in different synthetic combinations and on synthetics, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. So Tony, excited to hear your thoughts, especially with your banking background.
Sure. I think in the bigger picture, why DeFi or smart contract is helping to adding value, right, to the ecosystem. It's sort of like 20 years ago, what Google has done to the media industry. 20 years ago, you couldn't imagine the advertising business was programmable, right? You have data to support to precise targeting your audience. And nowadays, it's a given. Think about finance. That's probably equally true in the traditional finance space. You need a heavy infrastructure, legacy system, regulation, back office, front office, to run the banking business, finance business. Let's say, for example, let's say you are doing a loan. The process costs involved is just a lot, right? Now you have DeFi, basically is automating the whole thing and cutting the cost to a fraction of what's used to be. That's why I say it's a long tail financial needs that couldn't be met in the traditional finance system, now are being met in the DeFi space. I think that's revolutionary, right? If you're talking about loan, if you're talking about market making, if you're talking about structured products, collateralized, all this kind of stuff. Now it's one smart contract way, right? Compared to finance space, you need I don't know, maybe 10 bankers do this, right? You need underwriter, you need distributor, you need to getting a cut here and there. I mean, they're all high paid, guys, right? So I think that's fundamental why a lot of this stuff can be done much more efficient through blockchain, and ultimately it's going to be taking over some of the key functions of the traditional finance. With that said, the reason why it's not so popular mainstream yet, I mean, user experience is definitely one thing, but that's why it's low, right? Expensive. That's why layer 2 solution is so important now, and probably the most important stuff now. But security is another thing, right? If you lose your money in the bank, you can call the bank. Now, if you lose the money on a smart contract, you cannot call anyone, right? So I think how to make that security infrastructure available to the mass audience. I think that's probably the second most important stuff in the next 12 months. I mean, there's some solutions like security audits, insurance, or some semi-centralized solutions, right, to help consumers. I mean, anyway, all these things are so important for DeFi to really go to the mainstream. So people on the street, not people on the chain, people on the street are willing to use DeFi just like they're using the bank. So in large regards, I would say the DeFi competitor is a bank, right? If we see more people are putting money, switching money from your bank saving account to a DeFi or smart contract through Scale, then I think we are winning, right? And to make that happen, I think it's a collective effort from securities, from high yield user experiences, everything. Just like what happened 20 years ago when internet revolution is happening. It will happen faster in the blockchain space, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. It's easy sometimes to feel like the future is really, really far away. And it's also easy to think that like we know the way the world will unfold. And I think we saw this happen in mobile and other categories as well, where it's been transformational to a point where initially it feels slow and things happen slower than you think. And then over a 10-year horizon, they happen, much more happens and faster, yes, right? So I think that's really a good perspective. So moving to the next question, one of the things that I've noticed in my time in blockchain, I've been working, I guess casually participating since 2013, but working full time since 2017. And one of the things I've noticed is that if you're not 6 months ahead, no matter what you're doing, if you're not 6 months ahead, you're behind. And I think we're all seeing the current trends, but what I want to do is shift gears a little bit into gaming and oracles and some other topics really quickly, just for one round. And I'll kind of lead this off by saying, gaming in particular, I see these 3 tiers of value. This is my personal perspective. And the first tier of value in gaming is just using a blockchain to have a more efficient currency interacting through the game. I see the second piece as then integrating smart contracts with that currency. So if Mervyn beats Tony, then Mervyn wins the item, the award, the money, the sword, the shield, whatever. But when we think about it, the Oracle in that case is still a centralized game. And we're getting efficiencies, and we're getting trustlessness around the award, but we're still not getting trustlessness at the gaming level. And the reason why today is that, if the game actions took place on a blockchain, it would take 15 seconds. And now like anywhere from $10 to $100 based off of the compute to do that on Ethereum, right? And so I think, so one of the things that we're excited about with SKALE is this speedy game mode where you can have, almost instantaneous sub-second finality. And so let's use like poker, for example. If a game was set up so all the math of poker was integrated into the blockchain and into smart contracts, and then instead of us having to trust the game developer, the game is played on the blockchain. And all the math, all the logic, all the computations built in. And this could transcend into other areas. Poker is just a simple example where there's clear hierarchy of this beats this, or this set's better than that set, and there's a finite amount that we can integrate. But I think we're going to see blockchains used in even more ways than they are today, especially in gaming. And oracles will often become more in-game or in application components when we have really essentially cost-effective and fast transactions. So wondering if you guys have any thoughts, anything you're seeing in other categories. DeFi obviously is getting the lion's share of attention now, but are there other things that are interesting to you that you think will change once we get to these next generation networks and layer 2? Let's go in reverse order. Tony, do you want to go first?
Sure, I'm a gamer, so I got something to share. We have done some investment in gaming on blockchain as well. And you're right. I mean, a lot of focus still on enabling, right? To trying to enable payment, enable fairness, enable Oracle kind of stuff. I think there are two aspects of this. I think that aspect of enable more efficient gaming transaction, I think that's a given. A lot of people are doing that. And I see having a layer 2 solution on that is good, because otherwise, you see, you're competing, as I said, on Ethereum, you're competing with DeFi solutions, right? A DeFi guy can pay $20 to earn some money. I mean, as a gaming guy, you just for fun, you don't want to pay $20 to do something, right? So that's why I think having a layer 2 solution is actually a very good solution, rather than going on the mainnet. So I think that part is a given. It's going to be growing fast. I mean, a huge gaming industry, right? But again, while I'm saying this, I'm still saying that, hey, how do you use blockchain and crypto to help a game to be more efficient, right? To be better. Okay, another aspect we are looking at is, hey, what does it mean to be a blockchain game? So we're also invested into traditional gaming companies. They develop serious games, $1 million investment to develop serious game, which you can play on WeChat, let's say. The thing that for a game to be popular, it has to be fun. Using blockchain, no, that's secondary, right? So, and that's a barrier, because developing a real fun game, that needs a lot of money. I mean, that's more than any ICO project. It's, we have seen gaming development using 200 M US dollar over 2 years to be developed. So I don't think that's an easy place to be disrupted with, and there's no guarantee even very experienced game developers can fail on the next game. It's very volatile. I mean, having a blockchain aspect doesn't guarantee your chance of succeed will be higher. So I think on that part, we are a little bit trying to figure out more, to research more. What's the best fit, right? The winning factor to be a blockchain game. We don't really have an answer yet, but we do have an answer yet on the first applications, which is using blockchain crypto technology to make current popular games more engagement, more efficient. I think that's assuring.
Excellent. Okay, Mervyn, do you wanna go next?
Yeah, I agree with Tony here. It's actually really hard to compete with the gaming industry in general, because if you look at the amount of money and talent that goes into just building a mainstream game, it's really very hard to compete. But why I see a key value proposition here, it's around the gamification of it, around like the NFTs. So if you look at a lot of the gaming applications on the blockchain, you make incentivization models, right? Around, it's more or less like betting, wagering. So you actually have a monetization model in the incentives itself to actually drive more value proposition to the gamers, right? So I actually think that's a key element of blockchain gaming, where the NFTs and the incentivizations and all the wagering, it's very crucial to actually have an edge over more mainstream kind of games. But where I'm actually more doing research on, it's around AMMs. So I actually feel like what you discussed about oracles, I think what the industry is missing right now is that a lot of the oracles right now are externalized. So what's happening is that there is a dependency on the external oracle that could potentially fail when you see a black swan event like we saw on March 12th, right? So I think with AMMs, the industry right now is currently overlooking the concept that you can use these marketplaces to actually price these assets. So if your pricing comes directly from the marketplace themselves, then you can sort of get a deterministic value to always determine a certain price to each specific item or to each specific digital asset, instead of externalizing it through an external oracle. So I think that stuff like Uniswap, if they're adapted into this kind of more exotic marketplaces, whether it's on L2 or on L1, there could be a very potentially breakthrough solution where you can price it and liquidate and have all these kind of assets pricing oracle mechanisms through the marketplace themselves. And this is what I see will be happening over the next like 6 to 12 months. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. All right, Jupiter.
Hi. Yes, I think that the two panelists gave great points regarding the games. I think I maybe illustrate from other aspect. I think I'm not a heavy gamer, but I remember in the early days, when the early days of internet, there's also a kind of series of internet game called Mod. It's quite simple. People just there to talking, communication, but cannot do anything. Cannot do the fight to do the battle, other kind of a complex function. People just going around and quite freely. But that kind of function also attract a lot of users because it's totally free on the internet. But after that, we see that the internet games or game industry going to another different way. The game is quite sophisticated designed, and we have very designed battlefield, we have weapons, quite gorgeous, we have a lot of things, but all these are designed by the game companies. But what I think is in the Web 2, the gaming companies are dominant, the game industry. But I think in the Web 3, in the decentralized world, I think we can build up a more free, more open game spaces for the users. For example, let's look at the Minecraft, the very simple game, just build some blocks in it. But users in the Minecraft can use all their imaginations to build gorgeous, magnificent temples or cities or plazas, these kind of things. Attract a lot of users get into it. I think that's the beauty of the free. People can get into this world, can use all their imaginations to all the things I want. I think Web3 is just providing the same places or the same stadium for the users from the users globally can build up their own things. For example, I think maybe the blockchain project in the centralized gaming can provide all the designing tools or all the weapons for the users to build up their own world of decentralized games. People in the Web3 game is quite free. There's no limitation. They can do anything they want. It gave a lot of different experience of daily life, because in the Web2 games, we are getting used to complete some task daily life, quite tough and quite time consuming. It's very like our really daily life. But I think in the Web3, we can do a lot of difference. We think people are free, can just spending some time there, hanging out, and it's gave a lot of comfort zone on the internet because it's free, it's in the Web3. I think the blockchain companies can help to build up that kind of framework or that kind of tools for users to get more free spaces in the Web3 or the decentralized world. I think maybe that is a way that a decentralized game can think about or orient it. Yeah, that's my thinking about a new era of game. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to say I agree. One of my views with gaming, and with SKALE, we have about a third. There's over 50 projects or companies now in the platform and in the SKALE Innovator program, and they are made up of roughly a third broader DeFi category, about a third gaming, and about a third various other disruptive technologies or projects that are going after B2B or ad tech or other categories. Anywhere there's a middleman, there's somebody building a blockchain to eat into that business. So, but when I look at gaming, what I see is it's very clear gaming is an immense industry. And there is the blockbuster gaming, the Halos, the Fortnites, the the Supercells and Tencents, and these games that, I think there's a really good opportunity for crypto to get integrated into those big blockbuster games. But then there's also a massive growth opportunity of different areas and categories where we still have gaming, but they're blockchain enthusiasts. And and I even think we're going to have an intersect between DeFi and gaming in a way. And you can even see some of these early games, and I forget the name of this game, but you had to bet when this thing would drop. And there was a mathematical equation that would make the thing drop, and all the users had to, whoever was in last won, but if you're still in when the thing dropped, you lost your money. And, and I felt like I was, I'm old enough to have played Atari when I was a kid and, the first Nintendo, and it really felt like that. So I think there's even going to be a new category, and in a way, blockchain will permeate. It'll come from both angles, from the big players integrating components of blockchain, and the small players really growing market share, like we've seen DeFi grow market share. So it'll be, regardless, the next 12 months will be very interesting.
Yeah, I just got one thing to add. I think that's interesting angle because if you heard about this PDD, they are becoming the second largest e-commerce platform from China.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
PDD,
yep.
they are listed. Yeah, it's
yeah.
company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, right?
Yes.
Actually, they founder is my friend, so I know. I mean, actually, this is interesting because his gamification of social commerce, and we are talking about social. It's gaming, right? I mean, it's simple gaming. You're doing some simple stuff, tasks among your friends, your families. In return, you get some real tangible goods, some small goods which you can buy cheap. I mean, there's value attached, as I'm trying to say, right? But that was happened not with the blockchain in mind, but with what you said just now, right? If you have blockchain value creation transferring in mind, and having social gaming element into it, whatever has been made PD is so great, it's simple gaming factor, and that could be duplicated on the blockchain space. I think this interesting angle. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of just like you mentioned, the things that in advertising that change because of search engines, we're going to see growth that we're not expecting, and we're really close, which is exciting. Okay, so one last question here, and I want to ask this because we do have a lot of viewers from Asia that are here participating, watching today, but we also have people from all over the world, and a lot of people want to know what's happening in the Asian markets. I'm personally incredibly excited about the various regions, and have spent a lot of time over the last 10 years in various parts of Asia for businesses that I've started. And one particular question, because that's very broad, I would ask is could you touch too on emerging markets? Like, what's happening? Are we going to, will we see blockchain and DeFi and this industry have an impact in areas like Indonesia and other really large emerging markets? And just more broadly, if you could inform people about some trends and things you're seeing in Asian markets, I think that'd be really interesting. And whoever wants to go first, go for it.
Okay. I think in Asia, I mean, this is some question. We've done some research as well. In Asia, relatively to the West, right? I think if you are talking about DeFi, it's probably more CeFi at this point in time, because the Asian culture is more like top down, right? Authority-based brand. They have brand recognition. They trust the brand. I mean, they are looking forward to service or something guaranteed behind it. That's kind of Asian culture, right? In China, in Korea, in Japan, that's how it works. So if you have a agency that is providing financial services on blockchain, they probably will more into that compared to DeFi, because when DeFi, you are basically, there's no one in charge, right? You have to be very independent. You have to be very, there's no one you can talk to. I think that's what Asian culture used to be. So I think CeFi, as you see, centralized exchanges, right? Centralized lending, you know, all this kind of stuff is developed much better, faster in Asia rather than the West. Right now, DeFi is coming more strongly from the West and propagating into Asia. And the target audience, I would say, who are more converted from a CeFi to DeFi now in Asia, the demographic, I would say, is more younger generation. Whoever is more, I would say, they are more familiar with Western cultures. They're more into Facebook. They are more following this kind of new trend. They are more looking for new opportunities, which otherwise not there in the traditional societies. I think this group of younger generations in Asia are probably the early adopters. Once they adopt, they will adopt faster than anyone else. So I think, so when talking about Asia, it has to be a very segmented, targeted group, and they have very different behaviors among the groups. So those groups, I would say, probably is the DeFi group.
Makes sense. Jupiter, Mervyn, want to touch on that at all?
Yeah, actually, I echo the same thoughts as Tony. I think right now what we're seeing is a lot of catching up on the Asian customer base. Like, a lot of the innovation is coming from West. So a lot of the West probably has a language barrier over to Asia. So a lot of the key concepts, like even learning how to use some of these new kind of features like Uniswap, right? A lot of them are very accustomed to the centralized exchanges, but what we're seeing is that the younger generation, mainly the people who are more speculative in nature, who want to try out some of these higher risk products in DeFi, they are actually slowly moving forward. And I actually see a lot of the centralized exchanges nowadays, like they're getting quite worried about the market share that the DEXs are taking over. And you see a lot of them, like even like some of these smaller Chinese exchanges slowly just opening up their listing process, because that's the whole reason why people move towards DEXs, right? It's open, it's permissionless, no one can just stop you, there's no KYC. Everyone can just list a new asset, a new project anytime they want. And a lot of the centralized exchanges are slowly like trying to retain their market share by opening up this kind of listing processes, right? So it's very interesting that in terms of like real world usage, I see a lot of like even in Southeast Asia, in Singapore and Asia, a lot of them are slowly still catching up. They're trying to understand how a lot of some of these DeFi products work. But I think in order to have more real world usage, a lot of them has to exist around stable coins. And I think that's why the whole DeFi space is moving so quickly recently. Like you mentioned, like a country like Indonesia, right? I guess when you're trying to launch a new product, you can't really sell them the idea of using volatile crypto assets to really transact. But I've seen some startups use like DAI. So a lot of the adoption in the DeFi space are pushed around stable coins, and hey, now you can get a stable coin like DAI and then get interest on this, and now they're packaging in nicely into mobile interfaces that can really like proliferate through the region. So yeah, I think that's the trend we're seeing right now. A lot of the traction is slowly picking up, but like I mentioned, a lot of the innovation happens in the West, and it takes a lot of education, I would say, like educating them into their local languages, into their local culture, and getting them more in-depth understanding of how DeFi actually works. Yeah.
Yes, I think another aspect maybe I can add to is that I think the people in Asia have risen their awareness of blockchain, also the crypto, because the central banks in Asia are planning their CBDCs plans, especially in the Southeast Asia. We see that China has a DCEP plans in the near future. We also see the MAS in the Singapore has been researching about the CBDC and the financial structure for almost 4 years. We also see the Hong Kong central banks, also the Thailand central banks have a core research regarding the CBDC cross-border scenarios and solutions. Also, we see the Cambodia central banks launch their quasi-formal CBDC. So what I think is the government or the central banks in Asia, they are treated the blockchain, the crypto quite serious. They take it as a very innovative infrastructure for the future financial world. And based on that, we are launching new this kind of central banks digital currency maybe in the future, but in different time span. But this will cause the common people in Asia regions to know that the crypto is a great thing, is a serious thing, is very business focused. So that is a good trend for the private sector to promote or to drive the plans of the blockchain projects into the Asia regions. That is quite good sign for the whole environment of the blockchain. That's a thing I'd like to add. Thank you.
Yeah, really good points. And I think the takeaways there for me, and I think people listening, are some of these complex DeFi structures that take more education, more risk, are probably going to be more later adopted. And and my personal belief is we get to mass scale and we get to hundreds of millions of users when someone can use an application on their phone and interact with blockchain and not need to know they're interacting with blockchain. So API-based wallets, better fiat on-ramps, better scaling, et cetera. These things bring valuable functionality to different applications. And also the ownership economy, I think, will be having an impact. And but again, we have a ways to go. And I think we're getting closer though. So again, these things always feel a long ways out until you get to that knee of the curve, and then they happen really quick. So, hey, I just want to again thank you for joining today, and just a phenomenal conversation. I definitely learned some things. I hopefully people here also were inspired and learned and got a really in-depth perspective on some deep topics in crypto and in blockchain. So it's been fun for me. Also just want to again say thank you for supporting the SKALE Network. And we appreciate your support, and we're very excited for the launch. And we've been working on this for a very long time. And people can learn more about SKALE. There's plenty of resources here available, but by going to skale.network, SKALE with a K. And again, thank you. And I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great event.
Time. Yeah, great event.
Thanks, Jack.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye.
Hello, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the panel. Thanks again for being here and learning more about Scale. Now, I'm going to tell you more about how the Scale network functions and operates. And let's get started. Okay. So what is Scale? Scale is an Ethereum integrated elastic blockchain network. 1,000 nodes could run 8,000 independent Scale chains. What this means is every single application or DApp or DApp can have their own blockchain and connect that to Ethereum. And Scale is not only just another blockchain network that connects to Ethereum, it's actually built on and integrated with Ethereum. And so it runs partially on the Ethereum mainnet and partially in the Scale network. And the Scale network essentially covers both components. So what this does is it gives every single decentralized application for a fee their own blockchain, and that allows them to do sub-second block times at very high throughput, up to 2,000 transactions per second in each single large-scale chain. It's even configurable for cost and eventually for privacy. So it's specific to their needs. You can also do file storage in Scale, and in doing so, run a fully decentralized application. Okay, so that means you can run a decentralized cloud in a similar way to AWS, providing a cloud, but this is for a DApp or blockchain app specific decentralized cloud. You could run a side chain or a side shard or an elastic side chain or just a blockchain. And you can even integrate rollups and Scale eventually. So let's talk about what makes the Scale network unique. And what I like to call are the element of randomness, rotation, and incentives. So large blockchains are typically slower and more expensive to use because every single node in the network has to have the same state. Now, what you get though in doing so is greater security across the network. So each node can also check in with other nodes, and to have a Byzantine attack, it's much more difficult when there's more nodes to get 2/3 to be rogue or to go bad. And so if you have a smaller set of nodes, it's naturally going to be faster. And in Scale, not only is it faster because there's a smaller set of nodes, but it's running Scale consensus, and it's using BLS threshold signatures for messaging. And so those are two of many technical additions that also make Scale a scaled chain faster. But the issue is if we come to a point where we have a potential collusion scenario in a blockchain, what we see here is if 2/3 of these node operators could collude, they could in a sense steal money. So how do we prevent that from happening? Well, the network is able to randomly pull using a cryptographic method with BLS threshold signatures and a RANDAO function, meaning you can securely get a random number to assign nodes to work for a chain. And then once that chain's established, those nodes don't just stay there, they're rotated in a random function. The last piece of the puzzle here are incentives. Every node has a large stake in the network, and if they act maliciously or go Byzantine or act bad or have bad performance, they lose money. And so there's a monetary incentive not to attack. The greater monetary incentive is to act good, because then you get inflation from the network, you get paid, and you get fees paid by dApps that run Scale chains. So this network is all permissionless and a proof of stake network and decentralized and owned by the community. And it launches, the first version of the mainnet launched on June 1st. The second version launches on September 1st. Okay, so now Scale is not just one chain, as I said, there's many, many chains and in the network. And again, because of the randomness, rotation incentives, we have a pooled security model, is why Scale in a way is sharding as opposed to being a side chain, but it's dynamic sharding with app-specific shards or app-specific versions of Ethereum, because each chain in the network also has Ethereum virtual machine running on it, which makes it highly compatible and easy to use for people that build applications on Ethereum. Okay, so a lot of projects, DeFi, gaming, B2B, other areas of blockchain, when they start, they don't need a huge amount of resources. Just like in Web 2, if you want to use Amazon or Google Cloud or a cloud provider, you're able to rent or buy from the network or from their service just a small component to match your needs. And Scale does the same thing. If you're just getting started, you can get a small chain, you can get a medium chain or a large chain if you're bigger. And the larger the chain, the higher the throughput and the more the storage, okay? And so these are configurable for your needs and your requirements, which is something that's pretty novel within blockchain to allow for enterprise software-like configuration. Now, how this comes to life is, and how it's brought to bear to users is due to the architecture of the node core and the node in general. Now, the node core, every single Scale node, you could think of these as the computers that run the network, that are in the network. There's a component in the middle that does orchestration, auditing, and administration. So this resource of every computer or node in the network works for the network. It also speaks back and forth to the Ethereum network, where the Scale manager lives, which is a series of smart contracts. And what this means is, through this architecture, this node core works in conjunction with what I like to call the virtualized sub-nodes. So these sub-nodes are all essentially small computers or nodes on their own, and each one could be working on a different blockchain. And so what happens is the network gets a lot of usability and a lot of performance and a lot of efficiency, because if a dApp comes and wants to use a small piece, one node could be on 128 different blockchains or Scale chains, or maybe less if it's being allocated to some medium ones, or maybe only one if it's being allocated in a large chain. And so what happens is there's a lot of efficiency gain through the Scale network because of this containerized architecture. And so this is the use of containers or microservices in conjunction with cutting edge cryptography that allows for this functionality to be utilized. Okay, so again, a validator that's running a node and supporting Scale chains can be allocated their chain to a large chain, support multiple small chains, or like I said earlier, we talked about randomness, potentially even just kept completely open to be leveraged later for different chains, okay? It's part of the security of the system. Now, how does Scale connect to Ethereum? Well, every dApp on Ethereum is using the Web3 JS connector. What happens is this connects into Ethereum and it connects into the smart contracts, and that's how Ethereum works. Well, when you connect to Scale, you just point to your Scale chain through Web3, and then it's connected in both places. So that's not good, because then it would just be using two different blockchains at the same time. And so what happens is the mainnet contract gets frozen, and so the assets come and they just get frozen, and then they get cloned over to the Scale chain. And some people like to call this wrapping, but they basically get frozen here and they get moved over to the Scale chain, a copy of them. And it happens then, it just runs over here in Scale, and when the end user wants to go back to the take assets back, then they know there's a ping here that notifies Scale directly from the Web3, so the network doesn't have to wait for Ethereum to tell it that the asset needs to leave. And then the clone consensus is run by the Scale nodes. The cloned assets are burned, and then they're unlocked over on the Ethereum mainnet, and they go back to the end user. And the end user has an incredibly seamless experience. And while they're in the Scale chain, no gas fees, sub-second block times, and they pay gas fees only when they come in and out of Ethereum. Okay. That's how interoperability works. So I mentioned earlier that Scale is actually built in Ethereum. And so the Scale network has a component in the Ethereum network. And this component in the Ethereum network, we have staking, inflation, fees, and administration. These pieces actually live on Ethereum. Okay, and then over here in the Scale network are the nodes and the Scale chains. And this combination allows for even greater security and interoperability with the Ethereum network. All right, and so when stake happens, it gets stake lives on the Ethereum mainnet. The inflation that pays the validators, that lives on the Ethereum mainnet. Fees live on, are paid out by dApps for chains, all in the Ethereum mainnet. And then through this administration function, validators and delegators are paid that stake in the network. And so there's a foundational security in Ethereum, and then the usability of the chains happens outside of the Ethereum network in the SKALE nodes on SKALE chains. And all of this happens within the SKALE network. Okay, so here's our picture of Ethereum capturing that these staking, inflation, fees, administration are happening over in a different, in the Ethereum mainnet. Another element here is that when you build on SKALE, you get instant interoperability. You don't lose interoperability into other Web3 components, including oracles. And this is all thanks to the fact that the Ethereum virtual machine lives on every single SKALE chain. So I hope this has been informative for you. We're very, very excited. Again, the SKALE Mainnet launches. Mainnet Phase 2 launches on September 1st. That's where staking goes live. This follows an auction on with Consensus Activate that happens on August 17th. And then there'll be a 90-day proof of use period. And then the token will become liquid and will be on exchanges and in areas where people can access it and who don't already have tokens, 90 days following the Phase 2 launch. So again, resources here. Please feel free to check this out. And we are excited about the next steps and really excited to have this community be growing across the world. Okay, thank you.